Canada's got itself in a bit of a diplomatic arm wrestle with the United States, and it's getting messier by the day. What started as trade tensions has now snowballed into something way bigger, like potentially ditching a $113 billion F-35 fighter jet deal. Yep, Canada might just be walking away from one of the priciest military deals in history. So what's got Ottawa so riled up? Well, Washington's been throwing some hefty tariffs at Canada on steel, aluminum, and even agricultural products. It's like Uncle Sam's trying to squeeze every last penny out of the North. And now, Canada's ready to hit back. They're hinting at not just dropping the F-35 deal, but also rethinking military cooperation altogether. Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't exactly mince words. He straight up said that Canada needs to wake up and realize they can't just blindly trust the US on everything. Then Defense Minister Bill Blair chimed in with a similar vibe, saying it might be time to rethink their entire defense strategy. You can practically hear Ottawa's wheels turning. Is it time to say goodbye to the F-35 and start shopping for fighter jets from Europe instead? For nearly 2 years now, Canada and the US have been stuck in this weird, tense dance. It all started back with the Trump administration slapping tariffs on Canada's automotive and steel sectors. Trade disputes were popping up faster than conspiracy theories online. From dairy to steel, it was a mess. And every time the White House hinted at changing quotas, Ottawa felt the chill. The big question became, do we really want to rely on one supplier for our defense needs? Then came the tipping point, March 12th. Carney made it clear in an interview that Canada couldn't just keep putting all its defense eggs in one American basket. And when Blair doubled down on that sentiment 2 days later, people couldn't help but wonder, is the F-35 deal dead in the water? Now let's be real, ditching the F-35 isn't a small move. It's the military equivalent of calling off a wedding at the altar. It's loud, it's messy, and everyone's got an opinion. But at this point, Canada's feeling the pressure to make a decision. If they back out now, it sends a clear message to Washington. We're not your lapdog, but let's be honest. If Canada does pull the plug, it's not just about the money. It's about proving they're not afraid to stand up and look for alternatives. And that's the kind of move that makes the world sit up and pay attention. So what's next? Will Canada really slam the door on the F-35 deal and risk rattling its biggest ally? Or will they find a way to patch things up before it's too late? One thing's for sure, whatever happens, it's going to be one hell of a story. Stay tuned to True Story with Jordan, because this showdown isn't over yet. Canada is caught in a whirlwind of controversy, one that stirred up questions about loyalty, independence, and of course, billions of dollars. After years of locking itself into the American military bubble, Ottawa is finally wondering, is it time to break free and find new wings? Defense Minister Bill Blair dropped a bombshell recently, hinting that Canada might just ditch the F-35 stealth fighter jet deal. And we're not talking pocket change here. $113 billion is on the line. So why the sudden change of heart? Well, it turns out being too cozy with the United States has its drawbacks, especially when trade disputes and tariffs keep crashing down like hailstones on a tin roof. There's been plenty of chatter about European alternatives too. Could Canada swap the American dream for something a little more, say, French? The Eurofighter Typhoon and the French Rafale have both popped up as potential replacements. It's not the first time Ottawa's flirted with European fighter jets either. Back in the early 2010s, the debate was hot over the Eurofighter, the Boeing Super Hornet, and the Rafale versus the flashy F-35. Spoiler alert, the F-35 won that round. Why? Because it promised integration with the US and a shiny joint program that seemed like a no-brainer at the time. But times have changed. Now the relationship feels more like being stuck in a toxic friendship. One where you're constantly reminded that you're the sidekick, not the hero. With the US slapping tariffs on everything from steel to dairy, Canada's patience is wearing thin. The whole idea of relying solely on American military hardware suddenly feels like wearing hand-me-downs from a not-so-friendly neighbor. European manufacturers aren't exactly shy about jumping in on the drama. They're waving their hands like enthusiastic students in class, saying, "Pick me, pick me." The Eurofighter Typhoon Consortium is quick to highlight how their jets might not be as stealthy as the F-35, but they're versatile and way cheaper to maintain. Meanwhile, the French are boasting about how the Rafale can handle Canada's chilly climate without breaking a sweat. Of course, there's the obvious problem. The F-35 is already part of a massive club that includes allies like the United Kingdom, Italy, Australia, Norway, and Denmark. Canada wanted in on that exclusive party, strength in numbers and all that. It seemed like the safest bet, but now, the shine's wearing off, and Ottawa's wondering whether being a follower is really worth the price tag. And let's not ignore the logistics nightmare. Canada's practically America's upstairs neighbor, and that kind of proximity makes relying on U.S. military logistics almost too convenient to give up. The idea of completely severing ties feels like trying to move out without a plan, risky and reckless. Yet the sting of those tariffs has fueled a growing desire to explore new partnerships, even if it means starting from scratch with evaluations and contracts. In the midst of this mess, there's one undeniable fact. Ottawa's tired of feeling like the underdog. Maybe it's time to rethink the whole relationship. Maybe it's time to stop being the sidekick and start flying solo, or at least find a partner who doesn't treat them like an afterthought. The real question now is, will Canada have the guts to take the leap and rewrite its defense strategy from the ground up, or will it stick to the familiar path and hope the U.S. throws them a bone? Whatever the outcome, one thing's for sure. This saga is far from over. It's a power struggle that's been brewing for a while now. Canada, America's long-standing ally, is openly questioning its allegiance, and it's all centered around one controversial aircraft, the F-35 stealth fighter jet. You'd think that after investing billions into a deal with the United States, it would be smooth sailing from here. But no. Instead, we're witnessing a messy diplomatic tango where every step feels more uncertain than the last. Canada's Defense Secretary Bill Blair dropped a subtle bombshell recently, hinting that maybe, just maybe, it's time to look elsewhere for defense deals. Imagine that, a decades-long partnership suddenly on the rocks, and why? Because Canada's finally fed up with being squeezed by U.S. tariffs and policies. Talk about an unexpected plot twist. As if that wasn't enough to stir the pot, some folks in the Ottawa media were quick to catch on, throwing headlines like, "Saying goodbye to the F-35 into the mix, but hold up, nothing's officially cancelled. It's more like a massive maybe hanging over everyone's heads." And guess what? That's enough to get both sides sweating. The U.S. Department of Defense isn't taking this lightly either. They're practically begging Canada to reconsider, saying the fallout could hit bilateral relations hard. It's like watching two best friends have a public meltdown, and no one knows if they'll make up or cut ties for good. Now, what if Canada really does decide to pivot to Europe? We're talking about potentially cozying up with manufacturers from France, the UK, Germany, or even Sweden. That's not just buying a few planes, that's a full-on geopolitical move that could shake up alliances. Imagine the ripple effects. Trade deals restructured, defense strategies realigned, and maybe even a new European buddy system that leaves the US looking over its shoulder. There's a growing sentiment among Canadians that maybe it's time to diversify and stop leaning so heavily on Uncle Sam. And after years of being slapped around by tariffs and trade disputes, who could blame them? Some experts are saying it's about time Canada finds its own path, even if that means walking away from a multi-billion-dollar deal. But here's where things get really spicy. The public is actually rooting for it. That's right, after years of feeling undermined by American policies, Canadians are applauding the idea of standing up and saying, "We're not your punching bag." It's almost poetic. David versus Goliath, but with fighter jets instead of slingshots. Of course, it's not all cheers and applause. Critics argue that scrapping the F-35 deal would be like shooting themselves in the foot. Billions of dollars would be lost, and the logistics nightmare of rebuilding a defense plan from scratch would be colossal. But when pride is on the line, sometimes logic gets thrown out the window. And let's not forget the wild card here, Trump. Known for his confrontational style, he's probably not losing sleep over a potential fallout. Some insiders are betting he'll double down with even harsher tariffs if Canada pulls the plug on the F-35. It's like a high-stakes game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? With political corridors heating up and opinions swaying back and forth, it's clear that the next move could either mend fences or burn bridges entirely. Will Canada really walk away from the F-35, or is this just a massive bargaining tactic to get a better deal? One thing's for sure, this saga isn't over. Whether it's a bold statement of independence or just a scare tactic, we're all waiting to see how this power play unfolds. So what's your take?